Good morning. Welcome to Dad's Rules. Today we're gonna mix up a little bit. I'm gonna talk about one of my top 20 movies. Let's just say this one has to be within my top five. And today's movie, what we're gonna talk about for all you dads out there, um, is Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing, made by Spike Lee, a Spike Lee joint. One of many movies that he has directed, written, and produced. Do the Right Thing is a great movie because it has a lot of conversation about it, and different thoughts and different opinions. So we're going to start off with Do the Right Thing. We're going to do other movies down the line, but we're going to start off with Do the Right Thing. So, first of all, Do the Right Thing takes place in Brooklyn, in the summertime where it's really hot. This was in the mid 90s. So I was there in New York at this time. A lot of racial tension, a lot of racial conflict. Um, Also, a lot of issues with the police, so on and so forth. So Mookie, the main character, on this day experiences a lot. He has his boys that he hangs around with. He has his girl who, was played by Rosie Perez, and they have a child. And Mookie works at Sal's Pizzeria. So Sal's Pizzeria has been in the neighborhood for a long time. And there seems to be conflict about Sal's Pizzeria on why there are no brothers up on the wall. At Sal's Pizzeria, he has a lot of Italian Americans up on the wall. And there's no brothers up on the wall. One of the protagonists in this movie is Bugging Out, who started the whole let's boycott Sal's Pizzeria, along with, other characters and all that. It comes to a big point of people feeling that Sal, being that he has a pizzeria in Brooklyn, should have brothers on the wall. This is where the conflict begins. Some people say that it was Sal's Pizzeria. So if Sal didn't want to have any African Americans on the wall, even though the pizzeria was an African American community, that was his choice. Then others say that he should have had brothers on the wall, being that the African American community supported him. All right. So to start with the movie, the movie starts, building the characters. It builds Bugging Out. It builds up Radio Raheem. It also builds up three characters, middle-aged gentlemen, that, just sit around and, they don't have jobs for whatever reason. And you also have the police officers who are also protagonists that come along at the end of the movie that really sets everything off. So to bring in the whole Bugging Out character, because in my opinion, I felt as though that Bugging Out was more responsible for Radio Raheem's death than anything. Because yes, I understand the boycott of Sal's Pizzeria, but it could have been handled in a manner in which there wasn't no violence, anything like that. Radio Raheem really was the lovable, quiet type that all he cared about was his music, and his radio, in particular. The song that played throughout the movie was Fight the Power by Public Enemy, which is the theme almost of the movie. So I felt as though that Bugging Out really was a catalyst that started the whole riot and the whole tension. You had other characters. Mookie had some responsibility in that also. Mookie was also concerned about feeling as though that Sal was hitting on his sister, which is totally understandable. And I probably would have felt the same way as Mookie did in the movie. And I probably would have approached Sal and been like, yo, what the fuck is going on? You had the two characters played by Ozzie Davis and his wife, that I thought that was really good. The mayor, or as they like to call him, the mayor. In one scene where the young guys disrespected him by saying that they would never be a man like him, not taking care of his family, going around drunkard and all that, when they really didn't know the situation or know his pain. I always say you don't know somebody else's pain until you speak to them. Needless to say, I feel the way that this young man treated the mayor was wrong because he didn't know his situation. I am a firm believer that no man should get up and walk out on their family. But again, you don't know the situation. It was well documented that when African Americans were doing well, especially in the major cities like Detroit, and when they started to get power, especially political power, that the government set it up for those companies, those big companies, GM and so on and so forth, to move out of those areas. And what happened is that it made unemployed a lot of African American males, and unfortunately, they felt as though some of them felt as though that having an extra mouth to feed affected their family, so therefore they left. Um, I don't condone it, but looking at how that time was, pretty much you possibly could understand, about being in a household and you got to feed kids and all that, and having an extra mouth to feed that should go to the kids. Needless to say, I felt as though they treated the mayor um, rather cruel. And let's be honest, in a lot of African American communities, you have the mayor, and that is a person that really just looks out for the neighborhood and looks out for the young folks. So to talk about do the right thing is to understand the main character and the protagonist and how it is a Greek tragedy, very much a Shakespearean piece of art. So the main character being Mookie, Mookie worked at Sal's Pizzeria, did what he had to do, was very respectful, spoke, when he felt as though one of the sons were being disrespectful about African Americans. He even made a statement that, how could you be racist and Michael Jackson's your favorite artist, and he didn't want to admit to it. But Mookie was the main character in the movie. One of the biggest protagonists or star troublemakers in the movie, played by an extremely good actor, Giancarlo Esposito, was Bugging Out. So Bugging Out had an issue with Sal not having any African or any brothers up on the wall. Sal was, this is my pizzeria, and when you get your own pizzeria, you could put anybody up on the wall that you choose to do so. So my issue with it is that, in as much that Sal is wrong, because Sal was making money or making a living off African American community, and he could have put some African Americans up on the wall. But when it all comes down to it, it's his restaurant. It's the same way if we had a soul food restaurant in an all white neighborhood, and we had nothing but African Americans up on the wall, and somebody said, well, okay, well, maybe you could put some famous white people, some famous Italians up on the wall, and we refused to do so. Needless to say, Bugging Out is the protagonist, and he is the reason why the riot started. So, not to go in deep into the movie because it's so many plot twists and there's so many characters that you can go into, but to go into the nitty gritty, I think the last 30 minutes of the movie is what gives the message. And when Bugging Out recruited Radio Raheem to boycott Sal's. So the young teenagers went over to Sal's to get a slice, and they was about to close. His one son, who doesn't particularly care for African Americans, was like, no, we'll close, get away, get away, to get away. Sal was like, nah, they enjoy my food. Open the door, one more slice, and that's it. Everything was fine then. Here comes Bugging Out with Radio Raheem. Now, Bugging Out ramped up Radio Raheem. From what I get from the movie, Radio Raheem was really all about playing his music, minding his business. But Bugging Out amped him up into going into Sal's, into protesting. So they go into Sal's and they start protesting. Sal gets upset, tells Radio Raheem to turn his music down. Radio Raheem was saying no because Bugging Out just kept on pushing it along, pushing it along, pushing it along. Then Sal loses his temper. And like I always say, a lot of people say that they're not racist, but when their emotions get the best of them is when the truth comes out. It's an old saying, when you have a drink, your truth comes out. I think when people also get very emotional, their truth happens to come out. That's why I always say guard your words. But Sal, he broke Radio Raheem's radio, and dropped the N-bomb, which just totally changed the atmosphere, with the young group that was in there. They're all of a sudden like, what was going on? So then the whole riot started. Radio Raheem started beating up on Sal. Here comes the police officers, who they had a brief part in the beginning of the movie, you know, showing how racist they were and just some of the things that they said. So that led you to, when they came to Sal's Pizzeria, when the fight broke out, that we kind of knew what was going to happen. If you grew up in New York around that time, I don't care if it was NYPD, Nassau County, or Suffolk County, we knew that a lot of the cops were racist. And at that time, they did not have the cameras. So needless to say, one of the police officers puts Radio Raheem in a chokehold. So we all know about the chokehold and what's going on in today's news and all that. So needless to say, Radio Raheem dies. They try to hide. They put him in the back of the squad car. He's already dead. They try to hide the fact what they did to him and all that. Mookie decides that, they're going to burn down Sal's Pizzeria. They burn down Sal's Pizzeria. The next day, Sal's sitting there in his burnt down pizzeria, he's going to collect insurance. It's no big deal, Mookie realizes what he did was wrong, but he also realizes what happened to Radio Raheem did wrong. So that is pretty much in a nutshell. Do the Right Thing. I think it's a great movie. If you haven't watched it, I suggest you do watch it. You watch it with your sons. I don't care if you're white, black, or brown. I think that it's a movie that needs to be watched, that needs to be talked about. We're going to talk about other movies down the line. This happens to be one of my favorites. I have many favorites. So I hope you like videos like this. If you do, give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. It helps to get this message out to everybody else. And also subscribe. Until then, this is Dad Rules. I hope everybody has a good week. Peace out. Deuces.